I think that it's a very interesting kind of dialogue between the verticality of the wiling and the horizontality of this building. And Spencer was just saying as we walked across here that if you're going to direct anybody to a particular corner of the world in terms of the history of late 20th century architecture, it probably would be Dallas-Fort Worth. So I think that there's a very strong tradition of the patronage of modern architecture, which probably, goes back to a whole range of buildings, not only here but in the immediate area. I think the way in which we encourage the pedestrian flow into the entrance of the building in a city where the reality is also a very, very high level of car ownership and mobility. So the fact that we get natural light deep into the car park, but if you arrive by a car, you can drop off here, and then the movement up and through into the front entrance, again, is reinforcing that very traditional element. So the balance of the flexibility that technology can offer in terms of the hall, the technology of the glass wall and the shading of that glass wall to protect a kind of urban room, a focal point, a gathering point, together with the landscaping, does make the transparency and the invitation, the kind of welcoming embrace of the building, and providing access to a much wider audience. So very much about the regeneration of the city, the power of culture to be able to do that, not just in this building, but the many other buildings which comprise this cultural complex, from the visual arts to the performing arts. And in a way, tradition has also informed the generator of this building, which is the auditorium. So in that sense, it probably will come as no surprise that the grand tour of those who are central to the realization of the project would embrace the Royal Opera House in London, La Scala, the Peterbrooks Theatre, the Garnier Opera House, the Metropolitan in New York, the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. Spencer, I'm sure, can add to the list. They were all, in that sense, inspiration. There's also a side of architecture which is rarely talked about, but is also important, and that is how you deliver value for money. And if you compare this building with contemporary opera houses, it comes out extraordinarily well. I mean, for example, the relatively recent one in Oslo, the cost per seat in that building is 6 times the cost per seat in this building. If you compare it with another example in Copenhagen, the cost per seat there is 5 times the cost per seat here. If you get a bit closer to home and you get to Toronto, then Toronto is per seat half as much again as here. So, so there are many acid tests in terms of a building. The really important acid test here is going to be the acoustics of this hall. And I'm not the most qualified person to talk about that, but certainly the reactions and the feedback that we're getting from, how can I say, one of the most important customers, the performers, is coming out very, very promising indeed.
We want to dissolve the barriers, to invite people in. So this wall that we're standing in front of is totally glazed. The big canopy is inviting you into the building. This foyer, this lobby space, will be open during the day, and if the weather was just slightly nicer and not quite so British as it is today, the whole of that hall there, all 3 bays, lift up 25 feet, so that the cafe and the restaurant at the far end are, as it were, outdoors. So all of this is about creating the minimum barrier to invite new audiences in. And of course, for me, one of the most exciting audiences are the kids at the Booker T. Washington School, and we hope that they will be in and out of this building as part of their educational development, and hopefully they'll come and work here afterwards in one form or another. So that relationship to education, I think, is incredibly important. So if this is all very expansive and welcoming as an idea, then the auditorium is quite the reverse. It's very tight, and the whole aim of the auditorium is to get a really intimate relationship between the audience and the performers. And when we go in just a minute, I hope you will see that. But the form of it, the horseshoe form, has been developed especially for this project in terms of its geometry to ensure the greatest overlap between the auditorium and the stage. So as much as possible, you, the audience, and the performers are all at one. So we have the orchestra, the parterre, and the 4 other levels, and you can see the geometry, the curved geometry, which slopes gently towards the stage, is all about trying to keep this space as tight as possible. And to emphasize that, the back wall is painted a very deep red, a quite dark neutral backdrop. And then to emphasize the shape of the auditorium and to bring people visually together, the balcony front is very deliberately quite the reverse. It's a pale silver gold, 12-karat gold on the rippled surface of the balcony front, and that's all to do with the acoustics. The rippled surface disperses the sound. The back walls are gently bowed to also disperse the sound. And then you have the stage with Guillermo Quitker's magnificent curtain, and then above us is the chandelier, which at the moment is up. This is in the performance mode. When you come into the auditorium, the chandelier descends right the way down into the auditorium, and then it rises just before the curtain goes up. And that's 320 LED lit perspex rods. The rest of the building is a burnt walnut timber running throughout, with the perforated suede upholstery on the seats. Again, part of the overall form of the building.
I think without dispute, as a core activity, you want the most engagement with the stage, with the action in that very traditional sense. But you also want, in addition to that kind of core, you want a degree of flexibility acoustically, and the ability to be able to drop curtains on the perimeter of this space so that it can adapt to an electronically enhanced performances, gives it an extraordinary wide spectrum of use, and within this very, very traditional and deliberately traditional form, that does extend the range of opportunities.
We wanted to dissolve the proscenium arch. So unlike a 19th century opera house, which usually has a grand gilded arch, here we play down the proscenium arch. So that allows performances to come forward of the stage, to project over the orchestra pit. So I think it provides a great deal of flexibility for the future, because who knows what opera productions might be like in the future.